Alright, so this is my father's 2003 Jeep Grand Cherokee. It's got the venerable 4.0 engine in it, and we've had it since about mile 7. My mom bought it new, drove it for about 120,000 miles, and I drove it for a while, and now my father's driven it for about the last 20,000 or so. But anyway, him and my mom were going to some event downtown, and they were sitting in traffic with the AC on, and he noticed that the temperature had creeped up here past 210 quite a ways to about our point in between 210 and 260. So obviously the engine at that point was overheating. He pulled out a line, drove it down the road, cooled it down, and then called me up here. Obviously, if you're having overheating issues like this, you don't want to continue to drive it and overheat things. You just really run the risk of damaging an engine with, you could warp the cylinder head, obviously blow a head gasket is the most common deal. Just cause a lot of issues, excessive cylinder wear, bearing wear. So it's really not a good idea. You want to get this rectified pretty quick. So he got a hold of me and I picked it up from him here. And today we're going to go ahead and diagnose it. With 170,000 miles, oftentimes this is the type of stuff that kills off high mileage cars. The engines are usually in good shape, but just little things like this go wrong and people ignore them and it destroys stuff. But we really like the Jeep. It's a good rig, so we hope to keep it around. So again, today we're going to hop up and diagnose possibly why this rig is overheating. Alright, now this particular Jeep, being a 2003 model, has the mechanical clutch fan on it, and actually it also has, and I'm not sure how well we can see that in there, an auxiliary electric fan that is designed to kick in whenever it starts to reach a higher temp where the mechanical fan just can't accommodate. So like I said, they're having the issue when the air conditioner was on, so that induces a heavier load on the engine, and at low engine speeds where you're not driving, obviously the mechanical fan is turning its slowest, so that auxiliary fan really needs to kick in. And I did let the engine run. I turned the AC on, I watched it start to creep past 210, and I did not see our electric fan kick on. So I just have some stuff here that we're going to diagnose it with and either track down if it's the fan relay or if it's the fan itself. Now, the first thing obviously you want to do is check over all your cooling system and make sure everything's up to a reasonable limit. We have a good amount of coolant in here. I did notice that there is a crack, and it looks like my father at some point thought it was leaking from the hose, but there is actually a crack right here in the radiator, so we'll probably end up replacing that also. You can see he tried to chase it down here and tighten it up further with some hose clamps, but obviously it's just got a little hairline crack here that it looks like is the issue. So before that obviously escalates, we're going to change our radiator. But for now, obviously we want to rectify our overheating issue, and we're just going to verify that our fan works. So I've pulled just some scrap wiring from the garage, and I know this looks complicated and convoluted, but I promise it's not. So what I've done is there's a little electrical connector down here on the passenger side between the fan and the relay. So obviously when the computer calls for needing that auxiliary fan, it's going to send the relay a signal. It's going to close and then loop power from a power source to run that fan until the computer decides that it doesn't need to run that fan anymore. Now, thankfully, with having an issue with the fan, we do have a mechanical fan on this vehicle, so we can get by. Where the 2004 rig, it only has an electric fan, I'm pretty sure, and it's a little bit different animal. But if you have issues there, obviously you're just going to overheat like crazy. So anyway, jumping in, I pulled the connector apart and I just ran 2 scrap pieces of wire down here into the connector. Obviously you don't want any of those strands touching, which were good, and I ran that up to our multimeter probes, and we have it set to DC voltage. You can get this is a pretty nice multimeter. You can get a pretty cheap one at Walmart that's going to do this same stuff for you for about 10 bucks. And really, if you do any electrical, you should really have a multimeter anyway. So now what I've also done here is just for a temporary use, we've pulled power from the battery here, our hot side, and our ground. And what I'm going to do is jumper the fan here just to make sure our fan itself hasn't worn out. Obviously we don't want to throw parts at this. We want to you know, just go ahead and move right back through the source. So we want to verify that our fan itself is actually good. So I have an insulated connector down there. You can see there's a couple of prongs coming out of that guy, which I'm attached to one with an insulated connector, and reason being you want to use an insulated guy here is just so when you go in and touch this, they don't arc between each other. There we go. So as you hear, the fan is running, so it sounds like that's in pretty good shape. So we can take all this out, and this is what I meant by that insulated connector there. Nothing special. I didn't even really crimp it on there at all, but just something so you can jumper power from the battery to the fan. Obviously you don't want those touching because you can mess some stuff up, so that insulated connector worked out really well. So anyway, at this point I'm going to start the vehicle. We'll turn on the AC, and we should see a signal on our multimeter once she starts getting hot, where if that relay is able to close, then we'll see 12 volts. But in verifying the fan indeed still works, you know, I'm assuming that we are not going to see a signal. So let's fire up the vehicle and have a look. All right, so we got the old 4.0 running here. I got the AC on, the fan's blowing, so we got a little bit of an electrical load. Obviously we got the compressor load. So our temp, see if we can get in here, our temp has started to climb. We're starting to pass the 210 point, so definitely our fan should be getting a signal to run, but we're not seeing anything. It's almost like it's trying to close, but it's not. So obviously, at least we're not getting power from the relay to the fan, so we're gonna have to dig a little bit deeper and go back to at least the point of the relay and figure out what's going on. So I'm going to shut this down before we overheat it again, and we'll dive into that. Alright, so jumping into the repair here, I went ahead and picked up a replacement relay from O'Reilly's, and I couldn't find my Dremel anywhere, so I picked that up. And you're going to need that to do this job if you don't want to rip everything on your bumper apart. But anyway, I got my little piece of my brush guard detached here, and we got our headlight out, so we're down to our headlight bucket. And basically it's just this one long bolt type deal here that goes through and holds the light on. Then you can yank it off. You want to pull it straight out. It has these little tabs, and they can get pretty stuck in there. Obviously I pulled this one out of the bucket itself, but anyway, I'm just going to let that hang there. We don't want to mess it up. Of course you can pull all your connectors out, but I really just want to avoid that. I don't want to mess anything up there, you know, break a bulb or anything. So I really feel better about just leaving it like that. Now our relay is hanging out right under here in this general jurisdiction. So I've kind of traced it out. I originally went up here a ways, but if you follow my lower line, which we'll cut out in a second with the Dremel, supposedly the relay is right behind there. So anyway, we'll go ahead and cut this out and get to it. All right, so with the help of our $20 O'Reilly's Dremel, we were able to get in here to our headlight bucket, and now we can get to our relay. So I think that was a pretty good cut. It's pretty good and accessible at that point. Now I just used the cutoff wheels that came with the Dremel set, which is just little hardened sanding discs, and I'll get to that point in a bit here. But when I've done this in the past with my old Dremel that I apparently couldn't find, so I had to buy a new one, I had a metal tooth bit that worked really good for going around here and cutting out plastic pieces. Now this one in particular, with those hardened little sanding discs or whatever, they're really brittle, so you want to take your time if you're using those. And what I can't stress enough about using the Dremel is to never be in the path of the blade. So obviously if you're grinding her out like this, you don't want to be hovering right above it, because if it flies apart, you know, you're gonna catch some of that blade in the face potentially, and that's really not what you want. So safety glasses are always key, and just stay out of the path of that blade. And I won't waste your time again explaining how to use a Dremel. I'll link a video below. But anyway, at that point we can finally get to our relays. All right, here's our old unit out and here's our new unit. Again, that red clip, as you can see, just popped up. And then you press down on this guy and then that unit pulls out, and I actually went ahead and just unbolted it and had it up where I could get to it before I undid that clip. So anyway, here's our new unit. We're just going to pop it in there, and I am going to bolt it down before I test it because I'm not sure if it's grounded through the body of this. I do see two what look like smaller gauge signal wires coming in, probably to close the relay itself, and then this is probably power coming in, and then when it's closed, you know, then it's power coming out. So that's why we have two heavier gauge wires hanging out there. But anyway, I'm just going to ground it just to be sure, and then we'll run through all our tests and make sure we're in good shape before we go ahead and bolt this all up and we still have a problem. So let me get that hooked back up and we'll check back. Power. I don't know if you could see that too good, but you could hear when that fan kicks in. So away she goes. I think we're in good shape. All right, so on the topic of overheating, it looks like after sitting here for about 10 minutes, it's with the AC on here, we're not going over 210. I guess it's that tick mark below 210 and 210. It's kind of hanging out right between there and looking good, so it's not creeping up to 210 and past it like before. So looks like our fan was our overheating deal, and with that corrected, looks like we're in good shape and good to go down the road again.